Greetings, everybody. Welcome back. If you have ever wanted to get involved in real estate, we're going to bring on Jason Pritchard, one of my good friends and a gentleman who has a $10 million real estate portfolio. He's done it all. He's seen it all, and he's going to tell you how to make your dreams come true with real estate. We'll see you soon, friends. What's up, Jay? How are you, brother?
I'm doing good, bro. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I gave you a little bit of introduction before this, and you'll see it in the show notes prior to, but I like to dive right into it with these guys. You're talking to plus or minus 557,000 individuals who have some sort of justice impact in their life. Could be incarcerated, could be formerly incarcerated, could have a loved one that's incarcerated. And most of the time, what you get with that is a set of limiting beliefs.
Yep.
And a guy like yourself who has amassed a literally $10 million real estate portfolio, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We're over at 10 million, man. In just over 7 years. It's been a pretty wild ride the last 7 years, man. It's crazy.
It's incredible. And you drive the car of your dreams?
Yeah. House of my dreams, car of dreams, wife of my dreams, life of my dreams.
Brother. I was going to go down the path. You beat me to it. Yeah. Exactly. Because I knew you'd say yes to all of it. And that's the thing that I love about everything that you've promoted. Like, you haven't forgotten really any aspect of your life. You know, the way that I see that you treat Jen, you know, publicly, privately, the way that I know that you handle your business with your family, you know, the work ethic that you've put in. And I've seen you firsthand, obviously, walk through this journey over the course of the last 7 years. So I want to unpack that with people. So let's reverse engineer. Right now, house of your dream, car of your dreams, wife of your dreams, life of your dreams. What was it like 7 years ago?
Let's even fast or rewind even a few years before that, because that was really kind of the starting point. Prior to ever getting involved in real estate, I had worked in corporate America. I worked in sales and sales management for two large corporations,
and you did well.
I did well, at least what I thought was well, right? And I was conditioned from an early age that, you know, you go to school, you do well in school, you go find a job, you work for a company for 30 or 40 years, and then you retire and kind of live out your golden years at the end of your life, right? And so I subscribed to that thought process and idea. And I had a kid when I was really young. My first son was born when I was 19 going on 20. And that was one of the big impactful life events that have happened to me over the years that really changed the trajectory of my life. And I had to get really serious because I was not in a position mentally or financially to be responsible for a child. And so I knew I needed to start taking things serious at a very young age. And so while I was going to school, I got involved in sales at a technology retailer, and I took to it very early on, and I was very good at it. And the money was also good. And so I kind of climbed the corporate ladder and went through like an 8-year cycle where I thought I was going to be kind of a mid-level manager or an executive at that company. And I became very, very burned out after 7 or 8 years of being there. And I thought it was an issue with the company. So I went to another company thinking, hey, things would change and the grass would be greener. And almost exactly 7, 8 years later, I went through that same exact cycle. And I found myself in a space where I was in my early 30s, where I was just very, very unhappy, man. I was very unhappy. And I was projecting that unhappiness into my marriage, into my relationship with my kids. And it ultimately boiled down to, Travis, the fact that I felt like I was put on this earth to do so much more than what I was doing at that time. And I could literally look at the people to the cubicle next to me on my left and right, and I could see my future, right? Because I worked with some people that were older than me, and I was like, I'm 32. The person sitting next to me is in their 50s. I mean, if I don't do anything differently, I'm just going to be in this cubicle, and I'm looking at basically a preview of my life. And I basically hit this transitionary point where I said, if I don't do something right now, I'm probably not ever going to do anything. And I'd always been drawn to the idea of doing real estate for whatever reason. I got turned on to self-improvement and investment type books when I was young. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was like 18, 19. I was always intrigued by like Tony Robbins and things like that. But I think people get complacent, man. And I think life gets in the way. And I think, we had the kids, we had the mortgage, we had the car payments, we had all of those things. And I had basically convinced myself, talking about limiting belief systems, that I could not turn away from those things to go pursue my dreams, because I convinced myself it was because I would be irresponsible financially, or I would be doing the wrong thing. But it came really from a place of fear and a lack of self-confidence and a lack of belief in myself. And it was basically just taking that jump when I was 33, about, going on 8 years now almost ago, where I just said, you know what, we're going to burn the boats. I talked with my wife. She basically gave me a year and she said, dude, you've got a year to figure this out. And if you can't, you can always go back and get a day job. And that's what we did, man. We just jumped all in, and it's been a wild ride since then, man. It's been pretty crazy.
Dude, it's just incredible. I love to see everything that you've done. I do. I respect the hell out of it. So let's talk about the fear. Did the fear come from a childhood? Did the fear come from your own internalization, from having the kid when you were young? Did the fear come from other people when you would express your dreams? They would say, hey, that's a crazy idea. Where did that fear come from?
All of the above. I think it's all of the above. I think we're programmed and conditioned at a very early age to basically accommodate our lives to fit into this system, the rat race or the system or whatever it is that you want to refer to it as, right? And I think we're just conditioned very early on that this is kind of the safe route that we're all supposed to go down. So I think when you come up in an environment where that's just drilled in you all the time, and everybody around you see is going down that path, it just makes sense naturally that you're going to go down that path, and that program starts to run just in a loop in your subconscious mind. So I think it's that. I think deep down, I did not have the confidence in my own ability to succeed. And I think that's what's stopping most people. I think most people want to make the kind of transition and leap that guys like you and I have made, but there's just a big lack of self-confidence and fear that's stopping them. And it's fear of the unknown. It's fear of their ability to perform. It may be trauma or something that came from a childhood experience, their parents or their teachers or their friends or things like that. So I do think it's all of the above, and everybody's experience is going to be different. And there is a lot of work going to retrain the way that you think. And basically what I do is I think of it as reprogramming my subconscious mind to implant new belief systems to propel me faster and closer to where I want to go, versus most people have these thought processes that are just holding them back. And those are the things that are running on a loop in their mind, man. And so that does take some work. And that's what I spent a lot of time, not just at the beginning, but now focusing on that mindset and self-improvement. Probably even more so now, right? Yes. People come to me and they ask me all the time, dude, what's the secret, dude? How do I get involved in real estate? All of these things. And what I tell them is like, guys, the real estate is the easy part. It really genuinely is the easy part, because if you can make the commitment to show up every day and do the things that you're supposed to do on a daily basis, the real estate will take care of itself. Because real estate, what's always drawn me to it is that at its most fundamental level, it's a very, very simple process. It's simple, but not easy, right? And so we're not performing like brain surgery on anybody, right? We are literally, if you can add, multiply, subtract, and divide, you can probably do well at real estate as long as you can communicate with people. So the barrier to entry isn't that high, which is actually interesting. So if you've got a good work ethic, you can get there. But the hard part is, can you show up every day when life throws one of those monkey wrenches in your path, right? When you get in an argument with your spouse, when your child does something crazy at school and you've got to drop everything and go pick them up, when you had all your hopes and dreams hinging on some outcome, some business deal, something that was supposed to happen, when that thing doesn't go your way, most people will let those things derail them completely. But high performers will show up regardless of whether things are going good or things are not going good. And I think that's a skill set and a characteristic and a muscle that you've got to work on and develop, because that doesn't just come naturally. You've got to build that up over time. And every single time, Trav, that I've overcome these types of issues and these obstacles, my self-confidence goes even higher, because I say that I'm going to do something, I overcome it. And then when I come out of the other end, it's like, man, that wasn't even as hard as I thought. So next time, let's set the goal up here. Let's stretch a little bit further and see what happens.
This is so true. So courage actually seems to get simpler the more that you take those leaps.
It is. It does. And I think having faith that in your ability and God and the universe and whatever your listeners choose to believe in, that things will always work out the way that they're supposed to work out, right? And it's just, for guys like us, it's been proven over and over and over again. So it's actually easier to have that faith as you progress. And I think most people, they need to see the proof first before they have faith. And one of the things that, if your listeners are going to take, anything away, this is a nugget that I would suggest that they take away. Nothing happens outside of us first, right? It's all internally. We have to believe that we can accomplish whatever goal that we set for ourselves internally first before it will ever manifest in real life. And even if you put the work in, and even if you put the hours in and you grind it out, you'll end up self-sabotaging. I see that all the time when people are doing it and then they sabotage themselves because their mindset isn't dialed in the right way. So the self-improvement, I spend more time doing that work than I do the real estate work, believe it or not, man, because it's still that important.
I believe it. I believe it. And so one word you mentioned I want to expand on is goals. So a guy like you who, so many people listening, it's 10,000, then it's 6 figures, then it's, 2 commas at 1 million. So now that you've done what you've done, how do you keep track of your goals? And then how do you stay focused on them? As you said, life is going to throw all sorts of curveballs at you, especially at the net worth that you're at. So what is a goal that you have right now? And then what do you do on a daily basis to either track or maintain or measure that goal?
So I try to distill everything down to something very simple and easy to follow. I think people try to overcomplicate everything, especially when you're talking about the type of real estate I'm doing or just performance at a very high level, right? And I think for me, I'm the type of person that subscribes to the keep it simple, stupid thought process, right? I think when it's simpler, it's easier and it's easier to stay consistent, right? And so what I like to do with my goal setting is, believe it or not, once I establish my goals, I write them down every single day and I say them out loud every single day as part of my morning and my evening routines. And I think goals are very important because you need to have clarity on where you're going. And most people don't have clarity. You need to have crystal clear clarity. It's like jumping. I've heard it referred to this. It's like jumping in your car and driving someplace you don't know without a GPS or a roadmap, right? And so any destination that you end up at is going to work because you don't even really know where you're going anyways, right? And so for me, I distill things out into personal, professional, and financial. I write those goals out every morning and I take time every morning to keep those things in the front of my mind because I've learned that the things that we think about the most are the things that typically get drawn or attracted or manifest to us in our lives, right? And so that's what I'm thinking about all the time. That's how I keep track of it. So once I set my target on a goal, I'm just writing it. I'm saying it out loud, constantly reviewing it and keeping those things top of mind. And it's just crazy how it works, man. Everything that I've done, and right now I use an iPad. So I use digital, like I write it out digitally. But before, when I started, I used to use those yellow legal pads, right? That attorneys use. I would just order them and I've got stacks of them. And I could pull those out of a box in the garage. And I'm not even exaggerating. Everything that I've written down, I've accomplished. It's amazing, dude. And things that making $1 million in 1 year, dude, like things that I never even thought were possible, we just eclipsed those. And it was so much easier than what I ever thought it was going to be to get there. And once you get past those goals, it's like, damn, this happened so much easier than I thought. Why didn't I just say 10 million? You know what I mean? Like, and talking about things getting easier, like once you kind of crack the code, like, okay, this is how we do this, right? Here's the process. Let's set the goal, cast a big vision, reverse engineer the steps out into, monthly, weekly, daily tasks, and just do the work every day. Keep your head down. And eventually that goal that you're writing down and saying and thinking about all the time, it eventually will come to fruition.
So true. And one thing that I want to unpack there is your routine. I know, just having known you personally and anybody who follows you on social media will see you're relentless in the routine.
Yes.
So talk to these folks about your morning routine and your nighttime routine.
So I've heard Ed Milet refer to this, and this is what I'll say. He said the most important times in his day are the first hour and the last hour of every day. And if he can control what happens in the first hour and the last hour, those days typically tend to be his best days, right? And when I first started implementing just a morning routine, I just copied and pasted it right out of a book called Miracle Morning. And I was listening to a podcast. I can't remember which one it was, but they had the author of the book on there. And I'm the type of person that I know that thrives off structure. And so when I've got structure in my life, putting in the work has never been a problem for me. I'm a hard worker. So the work ethic has never been a problem. And especially if you can give me a game plan, I can execute it. If you can put everything down on paper and I just can put my head down and do it, I've always done well. So I started doing the Miracle Morning, and then it's morphed into this variation of just what I have found works really well for me. So in a nutshell, what I like to do is I don't like to have a phone or TV or anything that's distracting when I wake up in the morning or right before I go to bed, right? So I put my phone in a space where when I wake up, my alarm, I have to get out of bed to go like turn the alarm off. I put the phone down, I shower, get dressed, I have a cup of coffee, and then I sit down. And the first thing I start with is a visualization exercise. And I visualize myself in the first person, actually completing the goals, these really big picture goals that I have, right? And the important piece that you have to think of is incorporating all your senses when you do something like that, right? So it's not just enough to have this mental movie, right? You've got to be able to visualize and bring in the feeling that you get, right? The taste, the smells, the sounds, all of these things, because that's what really crystallizes it in your imagination. So I have a 5-minute exercise for visualization. Then I have a goal writing exercise. Then I actually say my affirmations and goals out loud in front of a mirror, or like I'll turn my FaceTime camera on in front of my computer. I have a journal where I write out some just thoughts and different things that I have. And then I go work out, and that's it. And that's it. And that, if I can do that, those days 100% of the time tend to be better than the days when I just wake up, I immediately start glancing at my phone, scrolling, and just sleep in and don't do anything else, man. And I do similar variation of that to end the night. And that's basically how I do it.
I love it, man. I love everything about it. So let's go. One of the biggest questions that I get actually was on a call this week with a whole bunch of individuals. I gave them all your Instagram handle. What I love to do is give guys tangible steps. One thing that has always kind of really frustrated me about the incarcerated space is, everybody has these big picture dreams, but if you don't understand what FICO score is, well, there's no reason for us to even talk about an ARM or a refinance, right? So let's talk about rudimentary steps. The biggest question I get all the time, Travis, how do I get involved in real estate?
That's a good question. I get that question all the time too. And here's the answer that I give. If I were going to start all over again, completely from scratch, with no money, no resources, just the knowledge that I've accumulated over the last 7 years, here is exactly what I would do. I would focus all of my time, my effort, and energy in learning how to generate leads from people that are motivated to sell their properties for some other reason besides wanting to make as much money as they possibly can from the sale of that house. Okay. Now, that took a little bit of time for me to wrap my brain around at the beginning, because most people think, and my wife and I used to have this conversation all the time. She would say, why in the world would anybody, when Zillow says their house is worth $250,000, sell it to you for $125,000? Why? That just doesn't make sense. And I basically had to suspend disbelief and tell her, like, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me, but it's happening all the time. And we just have to figure out how to do it. And so real estate investing, why I like it is it's a linear process, and there are very clear-cut steps that you have to do to be successful. And you can't skip step 1 in order to go to step 2, 3, or 4. And so for me, the type of investing that I do, which is basically buying distressed properties, right? Distressed assets, adding value to them by rehabbing them, fixing them up, and then reselling them for a profit, right? There's only really 4 things that you got to get good at. And you have to start with step number 1 before you can do any of them. And step number 1, right, is getting leads coming in from those sellers that are motivated to sell for some other reason besides money. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. And if there's anybody listening on this call that wants to, get even further in the weeds on how we go about doing that, you can either follow me or shoot me a DM on any one of my social media channels, and I can
tell them where to find you.
Jason Pritchard on Instagram is probably the best place, or on Facebook. I think I've maxed out my friends on Facebook. So follow me on IG and shoot me a DM on the specifics, because I'll get in the weeds with you, man. I love, somebody helped me when I was coming up. I'm 100% completely self-taught. I learned this business from listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos. So I know that the information is out there, but I also got help from other people. Nobody did the work for me, but I got advice from other people that were doing the things that I wanted to do. And I believe it's my responsibility to pay that stuff forward. So you've got to start by getting leads coming in. And one of the things that was one of my biggest strengths or competitive advantages is because I was in sales and sales management for 16 years before I ever got into real estate. So all that time when I was unhappy, all that time when I was thinking like, God, what am I doing? All that time, right? And I believe that God was just putting me in a position to get ready for what I'm doing right now, right? And I did not have faith in my ability to do it yet, or I didn't even really know what was going on. But once I really understood how real estate worked, I was like, this is the same thing I've been doing for 16 years. We're just speaking just a little bit of a different language, but the fundamentals are the same. And for the people that are listening, right, that are coming out of a facility or they're incarcerated now or whatever, I couldn't tell you how many people I know that have some type of criminal background or have had something that has happened in their past that have transitioned successfully into the real estate field and doing the type of real estate investing that I'm doing. Because you don't, even though I'm a licensed agent, you don't necessarily need to go that route when you start. And I don't recommend for most people that they do. In order to invest the way that I'm doing, you can do that without getting your license and doing all these different things. As long as you're willing to work and put the effort in at the beginning, you can be successful. And I've seen it happen multiple times with people that, you know, have maybe checkered backgrounds or past, and they're letting that type of stuff hold them back. And you don't need to, man. Like, this stuff is a lot easier than most people think it is.
So true. So true. Thanks for walking us through that. You talked about leads. When I think about networking, you know, I can't tell these guys how important that is, you know, in all aspects. And I say this all the time, like, if we're running our world on these phones right now, right? There is no reason in the world that you should have a limitation on who you can talk to because you have this at your fingertips. So when I've seen what you've done and what you continue to do with networking, talk to these guys about how you got started, right? Because you obviously started generating leads and sales was simple for you, but now you're on a much bigger level. You're hosting masterminds, you're hosting meetups, you've got a lunch on a weekly basis, right? Like, you're networking like a maniac. Yeah. And so give these guys, like, what should I be doing to network? And what does that even mean? And who should I be looking for? Am I going after realtors? Right? Walk these guys through that stuff.
Absolutely. And so just to preface all of that, just so the people that are listening know and understand, when I got involved in real estate, I had zero real estate experience and basically zero money too. So I did not know anything above and beyond buying and selling like one of my own houses, right? And I used an agent to do that, how a real estate transaction works. So I came in with zero experience. So what I did, because I didn't really have the money to pay for a coach or to join a mastermind group or do some of these things that other people can do when they're starting to shortcut that learning curve, I had to, like you said, just kind of network my ass off, man. And I had to go out, and that's going to feel very uncomfortable. That's going to feel very awkward. And I can remember going to meetups, going to these networking events that were geared for real estate investors, and just kind of sitting in the back, not talking to anybody. As soon as it was over, I would just leave and just go and dip out and do all these things. And you're kind of defeating the purpose when you do that, guys. You have to be willing to talk to. If you're coming in this with no experience, no background, no network, you have to be willing to put yourself out there and talk to every single person that you meet about what it is that you're doing, because everybody has to know, not just agents and investors and all these other people, but people in your family. Some of the best deals come from my own personal network, right? Friends, families, contractors, things like that. So when you're starting out, the way that I would suggest finding them is, first, just go to Facebook and meetup.com. Those are the two websites where most of these networking groups, like the ones that I run, we post our events there, right? So you can go to meetup.com right now, go to your city and state and type in real estate investing into the search bar, and it's going to bring up any real estate group within a 50 or 100-mile radius of exactly where you're located. And I would go into any one of those meetups. And basically what I would say when I get there is, hey, my name's Jason. I'm brand new to real estate. I've never done a deal before. I'm here to learn and meet as many people as I can, and hopefully provide value to anybody that I can in a way that's impactful for their business, right? Get what you can from whatever they present. But the point of going to those meetups, and what I tell everybody that comes to my meetups, is the information I'm going to give you, there's value in that, but the real value is in the relationships that you're making in that room, right? And my life changed completely once I kind of disconnected from my social group, the guys that I had been friends with my entire life. And I'm still friends with them. It's not like I stopped talking to them or cut them off. But once I started getting a little bit more focused on what was really important to me, and then surrounding myself with people that were like-minded and focusing on that versus doing the same old thing that I had been doing my entire life, drinking on the weekend, hanging out, playing fantasy football, or doing whatever, my life started to change. Because when you're in proximity to people that are doing the things that you want to do, eventually some of the things that they have, they're just going to rub off on you. It's a universal law, man. It's how things work. So proximity is power. So you've got to be intentional about how you network. Don't just go there and show up and leave. be strategic, meet with people, and then start to build a small accountability group of 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 like-minded individuals, people that are wired like you, that you just click with right out of the gate, right? You can tell like, hey, this guy or this girl, I really get along with them. I like their vibe. They seem to be interested and intrigued by the same things I am. Let's go have coffee. Let's have lunch and talk about how our businesses potentially can overlap. And it's just as simple as that. And not everybody's going to say yes. And especially if you're new, you know what I mean? You may get blown off here or there, but what are you really losing if they say no? Not much. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I think you just gotta, you can't be afraid. I think most people let the fear of rejection or the fear of, looking dumb on social media or whatever kind of hold them back. And, if that's the biggest thing that you've got to worry about, man, we're doing okay, dude. So I wouldn't worry about that if I were your listeners.
That's the truth. Big time. Is your lunch meeting still booked out for the rest of the year?
Yeah, it's interesting. I get so many requests for my time. Like, hey, can I pick your brain? Hey, can we go do this? Hey, can we do that? So at the beginning of the year, I said, hey, I'm going to schedule one lunch meeting where I have no agenda, no nothing, right? Like it's going to be an hour sitting down. I'll talk to you. I'll even buy you lunch. I don't even care. Right. And I posted that at the beginning of the year and it got booked out until December, which was pretty crazy. So then I incorporated a call on Fridays too, because I like to keep my schedule lighter on Fridays. And then the same thing, that thing got booked out, man. And so, it doesn't start like that eventually, you know what I mean? Like, or at the beginning, like you're going to be the person on the other end, right? Yeah. And eventually you're going to find somebody like I did. I found mentors and friends and people along the way that, successful people are actually nicer than I think what most people, they don't realize that, right? When you haven't, been around a lot of high performers, I think there's a lot of limiting beliefs around how high performers are. And I've actually found that those are some of the nicest people that I've ever met in my life. And they're more giving than other people that I've ever met in my life. Right. And I think they see something like I know that the people that I look up to and that I aspire to be, they saw something in me that reminded me of themselves, if that makes sense. Right. Like, and I see that with some of the younger guys and girls that I'm meeting now, where I'm like, damn, this person gets it. And I want to help them. I'm not going to do the work for them, but I will help them do it. You know what I'm saying? And I'll show them the way. And as long as they keep doing what they need to do, they'll get there eventually.
I love that. So you mentioned when you got started, you didn't have much money.
No, nothing. What I started with was basically $30,000, which is money that I borrowed from my old retirement account. So I had an IRA account a 401k account from my old employer. I converted it into a self-directed retirement account that I could borrow like up to 50% of the value. So I think I had like $33,000 or $35,000 that I could borrow against. And I used that as the seed money along with loans from hard money lenders. We did cash advances on our credit cards. We took a second mortgage eventually out on our primary residence, and we would just go all in on a project, fix it up, sell it. We would take all that money, pay all of that stuff off, and then roll the profits and that money back in again to the next deal. And we would do that over and over and over again. And then eventually we would start doing 2 at a time, then 3 at a time. And then eventually it reached a point where I was starting to build and establish a track record, and my confidence started going up. And I reached a point where I was confident enough to start actually talking to people and presenting lending and investment opportunities on my deals, right? And that's, another thing where I can look back and say that my business made another leap, right? Because when your money is constantly tied up in all these projects, this type of business, it can cannibalize cash very quickly, right? And so cash management becomes an issue, especially as you start scaling. But when you can leverage other people's money and do it in a way that's safe and responsible, but also allows you to kind of grow, it really takes some of the regulators off your ability to, to handle multiple projects at the same time. But, before I ever asked anybody for anything, we did 15, 20 projects on our own, where we were just putting our own capital up, doing it again, pushing all our chips in the middle, selling, taking the profits back, and then just doing that all over again, man.
You remember those first deals? You remember that first deal?
Yeah, dude. The first deal, the first few deals, I can remember talking about limiting beliefs, man. I would do all of this, and then your mind just starts playing tricks on you when you don't know anything. And I would remember staying up late at night thinking like, dude, we're never going to sell this house. I'm going to go bankrupt. We're going to lose everything. I'm going to go get, you know what I mean? It's so funny to think back about how that negative voice in your head is so loud for most people, right? And learning, I didn't really learn how to quiet that voice that early on in the journey. And I'm just inherently, or I was inherently, like a big worrier, right? So I would worry myself to death about some of this stuff. And one of the things that I learned, man, is eventually I had an epiphany a few years ago where I was like, what are you so worried about? Like, everything that you worry about, 99% of the time, that outcome actually never happens.
Yeah.
So literally 99 times out of 100, we manufacture all this stress and this anxiety and all these different things. And we tell ourselves this story that we're going to have this bad outcome. And literally 99% of the time, it never happened for me. So right out of the gate, we're creating all of this anxiety and stress and just literally manufacturing it out of thin air. And there's no reason behind it. And the 1% of the time that it does happen, right? When that bad outcome does happen, I've always overcome it. It's always been easier to overcome than what I thought. And I learned so much. So then that way, the next time that same scenario ends up coming up in the next deal that I do, I know exactly how to navigate it, right? And so now I've just conditioned myself to say, with my luck, this is probably going to be easier than I even expect it to be. And if something comes up, it's going to come up for a reason. And I may not know what that reason is right now, but it's been proven to me so many times that I'm going to learn a ton from whatever this challenge and this obstacle is, that I'm going to overcome it and I'm going to be better on the other end of it. And it's hard to subscribe to that thought process at the beginning, but trust me, it works. And the question that I would ask your listeners is, what does it hurt to tell yourself a positive story instead of a negative one? Really think about it. Does it cost you any more time, energy, or effort to tell yourself that you're going to have a positive outcome instead of worrying about all the negatives? I don't think that it does.
No.
And you're going to feel a lot better when you start doing that, right? And so I would say try doing that if you're struggling with things like fear and anxiety and worry like I used to.
No, you're so true. And it's interesting, right? Because you've gone on this journey, but yet still on a daily basis, weekly basis, I see it. I mean, you're still battling people. You're still battling things, right?
Yeah. I mean, I had one of our houses burned down last week. I was there yesterday crawling all over a burned down house that I thought was going to be a quick and easy flip that was going to be very profitable for us. And 2 weeks after we closed on it, the house burns down, right? I mean, that's not the outcome that I was hoping for, right? Like today I was in civil court dealing with a legal issue with one of my own tenants that had been dragging out for 2.5 years.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but you did. So tell them about that, right? So a lot of people think, Jason owns a bunch of real estate, checks come in the mail. He walks out there with his slippers. They're all there. He goes back inside.
I mean, you always see the bright side, and especially social media. It's like everybody's personal highlight reel. So if you look at my Instagram account, it's, me closing all these deals, me and my wife traveling all over the world. I mean, I do post and I'm very authentic about the other things that happen, but you'll miss it if you're not watching closely. You know what I mean? And so the situation with those tenants was, we own 83 or 84 rental properties. Most of them are in California. This was one that we bought a couple years ago. Our business model is a value add business model. So we buy a distressed property, we fix it up. And if we decide to keep it as a rental, instead of selling it for a profit, we'll just move a tenant in and then collect the monthly cash flow each month from that tenant after all of our bills are paid. And so I remember we purchased this house. We spent about $45,000 remodeling it. We basically did all brand new everything on this house. So when we turned this house over to the tenant, it was looked and feel like one of our flips, not just like some cheap carpet and paint rental. We spent a lot of money going into this place, right? And this was January of 2020. About 2 months later, COVID hit. The tenant stopped paying rent. And then about a month after that, I get a notice from our code enforcement department basically saying, hey, that the tenant called. They said that there's some issues that need to be addressed and we want you to fix those issues. So I said, fine, that's no problem. We'll go over there with the guys. We got the list. It was very, very minor stuff, things that could have been fixed very easily. And we basically went on this 18-month journey with these tenants where they would either refuse to let us into the property or we would send guys over to fix the property. They would let them in and one of the tenants would become confrontational or argumentative and get to the point where they'd almost be getting in a fist fight. And my guys would basically just say, listen, man, I love you, but I can't go back here and work. And so we went through 7 or 8 or 9 different subcontractors over 18 months, just trying to slowly, get this figured out. And it was during a tough time because in California, there was a moratorium on eviction. So we couldn't just file an eviction for non-payment. Even during normal times, we could have done that, but that wasn't working. And so we were in a position where we weren't able to collect rent. on this property for close to 18 months. During that time, I had invested about $170,000 into this property. I had a mortgage on this property. So I was making my mortgage payment every single month, right? So not only were we not getting the rent, but I had, $1,500 in bills that were going out every single month, right? And ultimately, it just turned into this situation where it was very obvious to me that the tenant was trying to leverage all the things that were going on and kind of game the system, right? And get out of paying their rent. And we eventually got a judgment in eviction court and got the house back. They moved out. And as part of that judgment, I actually refused to take COVID relief because I could have taken COVID relief a year ago and got about 90% of the money that I was awarded today. I could have got that money a year ago from the state of California, but I was waiving my right to seek legal damages against the tenant. So I said, I'm going to take the house back. I'm not going to take the COVID relief, and I'll just take my chances in court. And I probably spent $7,000 or $8,000 in legal fees just to get to this point. And it was more about the principle than anything else, man. Like, the money is not what was really important to me. It was more about just, I didn't want them to pull this on the next landlord, right? Because had I been just starting out and this had been my first rental property and I wasn't in a space where my business and my other rental properties could support the losses we were taking over here, I could very easily see an owner walking away from that property or losing it altogether because of a tenant like that, right? And 95% of the tenants that I get are great. They pay on time. We treat them with respect. We want to provide quality housing for them. So I don't want to make it seem like it's all bad, because it's not. But every once in a while, you get, some loose cannons that are out there, and you end up, dealing with issues like this. And it's the cost of doing business when you get, into buying rental properties and doing stuff like that.
Yeah. Property management. Do you do it yourself when you started out, or
I did everything? I wore every hat at the beginning, dude. At the beginning.
You suggest that?
I think what I would suggest is that it is good to be in the trenches and learn each component and aspect of your business when you're first starting, especially if you're somebody like me, no real estate background, no construction background, no property management background. I think there's value in understanding what it takes to do each one of those things. Number one, just so you're not getting ripped off when you go to delegate that stuff out, right? You know what I'm saying? And so if you go hire out management and you have no idea how to manage a property, anything that they tell you, how are you going to know or have a frame of reference to realize whether or not, they're doing fair business with you? But, to go back to my one-man army comment, I spent the first 3 years just literally doing everything. And we reached a point in our business where I was doing all the lead intake. I was going on all the appointments. I was making the offers. I was doing all the follow-up. I was doing all the marketing that we were doing. I would go to our projects. I would manage all the construction projects. I would be in Home Depot cutting checks for guys for this and that and driving materials back and forth. We had about a dozen rentals at that point. So I would post the for rent sign. I would listen to all the calls. I would screen all the tenants. I would do all their leases. I was licensed at that point. So I was selling all the properties, and I just reached a point where I had no more bandwidth. Like, I literally, even if I wanted to work more, I couldn't. And I probably suffocated my business a little bit by staying in that space a little bit too long. And I think it had to do with limiting beliefs, because I was dealing with, I've heard it referred to as imposter syndrome when you become successful, right?
Yep.
And, at that point, I was 2.5, 3 years in. We had flipped, 50 houses. I owned 10 or 12 rentals at that point. And I was still in my head worried the very next day that things will all just kind of come crumbling down. You know what I mean? I was just like, I just got lucky 50 times in a row. You know what I mean? Like, that's it. Right. And I think I stayed in a space where I just felt like I had to keep bootstrapping everything, and I had to pinch every penny. And I was too afraid to reinvest money back into my business, to hire the people I needed to buy some of my time back. Right. Yes. So I think there's a balance there, right? And maybe not do it as long as I did it. But I do think at the beginning, there's a ton of value in that experience. So you have to find the balance that works right for you.
I would agree, for sure. And then scenario.
Yep.
I've got $50,000 in my savings account, and I need to get involved in real estate, right? That's always, a typical question. Hey, Trav, what do I buy? Where do I start? So you mentioned a couple of things. You flipped a ton, and you've also bought and held almost 100 doors. So is there a balance? Is there kind of like a recipe for that? Or what's your thoughts?
I think it depends on how involved do you want to be? So I think that's decision number one, right? Are you wanting to get involved at the depth that I was at the beginning, where I came in with the intent of growing an investment. I didn't want to do it on the side, right? I was all in on this, right? And so I was eating, breathing, sleeping real estate every single day. If you want to go this route, right? What I would do is maybe follow a similar path that I took, where you take that $50,000, right? That's your seed money to invest into your business, and get your marketing set up so we can do step one, which is getting leads coming into your system, right? You have to have leads coming into your system. If we don't have leads coming in consistently and predictably, we don't have a business. That's what I'm constantly telling my team, right? And so you've got to take, some of that 50K, right? Let's call it $8,000 to $10,000 and invest in the systems and the marketing that you're going to need to get those leads coming in, right? And depending on your market and what type of marketing you do, 8 to 10,000 could be your marketing budget for 6, 9, maybe 12 months, right? Which I think is good. I think you should be able to get a deal if you really put the work in within, I would say, 6 months, no longer than that. I mean, it took me about a year and I had no idea what I was doing at the beginning. So if you're really focused and you get around the right people, you should be able to get something done in 6 months. So get your marketing set up, use the balance of that 50K as that seed money, right? So if you're going to flip houses, one of the things, even if you're brand new, and I know this because this is what I did, you don't need, 200,000 to buy the house and then 50,000 to fix it up, right? You can take that 40,000 and go to a hard money lender, and they'll give you 80, 90%, depending on you and the deal and all these other things, of the money that you need. And you can use that 40,000 as your portion to cover the down payment or the gap that you need to cover in order to close on that property. And then what we did is we just got really creative. We opened up lines of credit with Home Depot. I'd find credit cards that would do like a $5,000 cash advance with no interest for 12 months. And I would open up 3 of them and I would do $15,000 worth of cash advances. And we would just kind of piece it together and Frankenstein the financing on every single deal, man. And I literally, dude, like it's so even crazy saying this out loud, how we were just kind of figuring all of this out as we go along. And the analogy I always use is you are very much building the airplane while you're flying the airplane in midair, right? And that's fun and it's exciting at times. It can also be really scary at times when it feels like things are going wrong, but that's what that is. And you take that seed money, and what I would suggest doing before you start accumulating rental properties is start on the transactional side of the real estate business. So flipping, wholesaling, if you're an agent, your commissions, you're transacting deals, and those transactions bring in big chunks of money, right? Like our typical flip out here brings in 40, 50,000. Our typical assignment fee on a wholesale is 20, 25,000. Commissions can be 8 to 10,000 in our market. So we're doing, 100 transactions between all of those types of those types of deals that we just talked about now. And you start bringing in and stockpiling cash, right? And then once you stockpile enough cash, if you've got your leads coming in, you can cherry pick the very best deals that come in, right? And that's what we do, right? We sell off the ones that we don't want to keep, but the choice ones, we're like, damn, this is really good. I got this at a great price. It's in a great neighborhood. We're going to keep this one for ourselves. And we take some of this money that we've stockpiled from the transactional side of our business, and we use that to invest in rentals. And so we have a transactional business and we have a holding company for our rentals. And the transactional business fuels the rental purchases, right? And we've gone from, I didn't even start buying rentals until year 3. So in 5+ years, we've accumulated 83 or 84 properties, man. I didn't think things like that were possible, dude. Like I can remember meeting one of my guys that, he was a very close friend, but he had started 2 years ahead of me. So I always kind of used him as like a GPS. Yeah. When his name is Alan. So I'd say, okay, Alan started 2 years ago. He's here now. If I just do what Alan tells me to do, I'll be somewhere around this point in 2 years. And when I met Alan, he told me, he goes, dude, I met him at a meetup and I heard him talking and I could just tell something was different about him. So right after the presentation was over, I went over and we were talking about our business. And he said, I've got 30 rentals right now and I'm going to buy 30 more rentals this year. And it was like May already. And in my head, I didn't have any. I was like, how does this, first of all, this guy's younger than me. I was like, how did he get 30 rentals? And how's he going to buy 30 rentals in like 7 months? Like I need to figure out like what he's got. And hopefully some of that stuff rubs off on me. And I remember going home and telling Jen, like if we ever get 30 rentals, you're going to retire. I'm going to retire. We're not going to do anything. And it's going to be over. We'll just chill, dude. And no joke, like 2.5 years after that, I had accumulated 30 rentals. I'm not even exaggerating, man. And it's the power of all of these things that we're talking about, dude. Getting in proximity to people that are doing the things that you want to do, doing that internal self-improvement, that mindset work, those things that keep us grounded, those things that keep our heads screwed on straight, and then showing up every day and doing the damn work, dude. Like if you can just do those 3 things, right? It's not that complicated. It's simple, just not easy. If we can do that, I think finding success in this business is inevitable. It's just up to you.
Golly, bro. And that's a mic drop moment right there. We honestly, I can't thank you enough. How do people find you? How do they reach out to you? Let's say they're licensed. Let's say, you know, they want to invest with you. Let's say they want to do hard money with you. How do people find you? And if
you're a licensed agent, we're building out a platform with my brokerage that I'm at now called Real Brokerage, where I can let you tap into all of the systems, the tools, the trainings, and those different things. So you can literally do exactly what it is that I'm doing, right? It was always weird for me because the first 3 years before I got licensed, I was an investor. And then when I got licensed, it was very strange to me why most real estate agents never actually invest in real estate. They only help other people do it, right?
Yeah.
So one of my missions now is to change that paradigm and help people that got stuck on the agent side and that want to transition over. So if you're interested in that, reach out to me and talk about it. If you're just wanting to do investing, or you're in a space where, like, if you're incarcerated, you're coming out and you want to ask me questions about this stuff, I would love to help you. I would love to at least be somebody that can kind of show you the way, man. So follow me on Instagram. I answer all of my DMs. I may not answer them right away, but I will answer it. And if I can be a resource or answer questions for your audience, Travis, I'd love to do it, man.
Man, I can't appreciate you enough, bro. I'm just so happy. Honestly, you know that. Like I reflect back fondly on the very first time you and I met in person and down in Los Angeles, right? Like, I just love what you have accomplished since then. And I think it's just freaking fantastic. So thanks for taking the time, brother. And we'll have you on in about 2 years when you're at 25 million.
I'm excited, dude. I'm excited to be a resource for your crowd and your audience, man. And I'm looking forward for you and I to be able to do some big things together in the future, man. I think there's some overlap with you and I that we still haven't fully tapped into it yet, but it's there, man. It should be good.
I agree. All right, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you.